So HTML, as I've said, is a non-extensible language. That means that it has all the tags that it's going to have, at least until they come out with the next version. And those tags are strictly defined, and what browsers do with those tags is strictly defined. And so, as you might imagine, any system like that, the first thing that happens is people decide on something they want to do that can't be done, right? Because it's a closed system, and the browsers already know how to represent, for example, a table, and if it's not a table, then it's not going to work. And in fact, in earlier forms of HTML, that was a real problem. People ran up against the boundaries of what was possible to do in HTML all the time, especially as concerns layout and as concerns functionality and as concerns fancy styling and stuff like that. Those are all the places where HTML had a hard time keeping up with all the things that people wanted to do. So people begin to play in the margins. They use things about HTML that they weren't meant to be used for. And the classic example is the table. In the original HTML specification, there was a table. Why? Because we sometimes need tables, right? Rows and columns of data, and we want to represent that data on the screen, and yada, yada. Well, people hijacked those tables in order to make layout. And still to this day, a lot of people, including me, use tables to make certain layouts. It's been superseded by other things, but the original idea of using tables for layout was hijacking, using the margins of HTML in order to make it do something that it wasn't originally intended to do. So they would make tables that take up the whole screen, and that would create the layout of the screen with all the different areas of the screen. HTML, while closed, got smart enough a few versions down the line to do something that allowed people to come in specifically and do the things they wanted to do. And the first big one was CSS, right? The HTML, the original idea was to put attributes in for every possible formatting that you could have, and that just got out of control. It was going ballistic. It was getting completely, way too many attributes for every kind of possible formatting that you might want to do to something. And so instead of those attributes, today we use CSS. And CSS specifically inside the style attribute of a tag, or inside of a style sheet that redefines what a tag does using either the tag name or the ID of the tag or the class attribute of the tag. So what was added to HTML was very simple, but it allowed a very big augmentation of HTML's ability to do formatting and layout. That was add an attribute, call it class. Add an attribute, call it style. Add an attribute, call it ID. And then have something else use that in order to figure out what to do with that tag. So this is a common thing, and you'll do it as well. You begin by defining tags that have a certain name, and then you realize that name needs to change, or the features of that tag need to change, and so you end up assigning an attribute and reading the text value of that attribute to figure out what to do. So we may have a student, and the student, instead of having graduate student as one tag and undergraduate student as another tag, we have a student tag, and it has a type attribute, and that type attribute can take the values undergraduate or graduate or postgraduate or whatever, and we read that type attribute to know what to do. We've abstracted a little bit away from having to name tags, and we've created an openness in our system to allow other things to happen. So in HTML, that's the name of the game. It's a closed system, but it has what you might call hooks. It has ways of making things more open than they would be otherwise. And the first big one is inside of that. Style hook that comes in the style attribute or the class attribute, and sometimes also uses the ID attribute. Another one of those, another place for extensibility is two specific tags, a span tag and a div tag. The span tag and the div tag don't do anything by themselves except create a division. Div stands for division. And the division is a block division. We'll talk about block and inline later. It's not really important right now. But the div is just a tag for wrapping something else, for saying, I want to put a little container around this amount of information. Why? Usually because I want it to lay out in a particular way, and I'm going to define the layout qualities of that div. Or I'm going to put a span around these characters. Why? Because I want to give them certain attributes, certain text formatting attributes. It's a little bit beyond what I want to talk about right now, but I'll just mention the third one, which is scripting, and the ability to use script to manipulate the model, to manipulate the tags, and, for example, show and hide certain tags, and change the style attributes of certain tags, and change the layout of the page using script, specifically JavaScript, which has come to be the main kind of script that web pages run. So HTML, while closed, has included all of these ways of opening itself back up, of giving itself a little bit more openness, of giving you hooks to latch other things into that HTML to change the way it behaves.